to a cleaner future is to propose 20 new LNG export facilities in the Gulf Coast. The biggest one, CP2, being equal to 675 coal-fired power plants and 20 times the pollution impact of the Willow Project.
Okay, well, you're probably going to hear a lot about CP2 and LNG in the future, so let's talk about it. First of all, CP2, equivalent of 675 coal-fired plants. That's not the emissions. That's not the emissions. That's the amount of energy it can produce. I want to be clear about that, okay? That's not the emissions, that's the amount of energy it can produce. Now, when that LNG is shipped to the other side of the world and it is all burned, could that be the equivalent of 20 Willow projects? It could, if you don't subtract all of the coal that it's going to do away with. If you don't subtract the coal that it's going to do away with. Coal emits nearly twice as much CO2 as natural gas. And natural gas does have methane. There are countries around the world that are growing rapidly, and we're trying to get them to transition from coal to natural gas because it's not happening with renewables in those countries. It's just not. India is not going to spend billions and billions of dollars on renewables. It's not going to happen in India. It's happening in the United States. It's not going to happen in India. So when we talk about meeting our climate goals, you know, we're doing all these things in the United States. Does us no good. It does us no good if it doesn't happen in other countries around the world. And getting this LNG, getting this liquefied natural gas to other countries on the other side of the world that are very reliant on coal, and getting them off coal and getting them on LNG is the best alternative we have right now. Unless you want US taxpayers to pay for every country's renewable energy. And I don't see anyone agreeing to that. Another thing, this natural gas that is going to be going to these LNG terminals already exists. It's already being produced. It's already out there. So it's not adding any new gas. It's not adding any new gas. So you have to remember when figuring this stuff, every time you add something, you have to consider, is it going to take something else away? It's also not burning the gas. It's not burning the gas. It's liquefying the gas. Unless you let methane emissions leak from gas and you don't burn it, there's no emission until you burn it. So the methane that leaks in this country from coast to coast, mostly from old wells that aren't producing anymore, collectively are responsible for 4% of methane emissions in this country. Now, are LNG terminals clean? No. Is natural gas renewable like a lot of states, you know? No, it's a fossil fuel, and no, it's not clean. We are not going to bring down global emissions without getting natural gas to countries that are reliant on coal, period. We can bring down the emissions in the United States all we want, but if it doesn't impact global emissions, what are we doing, right? What are we doing? So that is what LNG is for. LNG is to get this gas to countries who are reliant on coal and really won't invest the money into renewable energy because it's far too expensive. It takes far too long to get their money back. But gas is cheap. So it's a cheap way to get them to transition from coal to natural gas. Is it still dirty? Yes. But it's not as dirty. Unfortunately, this is one of those pick your poison type situations, basically. This is eerily familiar to the past when we couldn't build a new refinery because we had to get off oil, even though a new refinery would be 95% cleaner than an old refinery. So we ended up stuck with the old refinery that was 95% dirtier, which actually did not help climate change. It was actually counterproductive to the goal of, helping climate change. 100% counterproductive to that. And LNG is just the next thing to protest. It's just the next thing to protest. That's what it is. Which is perfectly fine. Which is 100% perfectly fine. But when we talk about climate change, when we talk about energy, let's at least do it with the truth. Let's call balls and strikes. Let's look at the pros. Let's look at the cons. You know, is this a better outcome than countries around the world just using more and more and more coal? I, for one, think it's a much better outcome than countries around the world burning more and more coal. But hey, that's just me. What do I know, right? That's just me. Thanks.